Get that paper, told that Glock, that's how we live. Yeah, my life's a game, I pray I don't get killed. They can't believe I got to go out this shit for real. Can't accept the fact my brother gone, I wanna kill. Yeah, I can't go for that shit don't sit right. Instead of capping to the old nigga, I know what you live like. Ain't worried about all just fuck these hoes and live life. I grown the drill, I'm smart enough, you gotta know how to
Shoyo
kill.
Hinata had always lived in a world that moved much slower than him. No, quite literally, that's what it felt like. From the moment he had first kicked the ball as a kid, something about him, it stood out. It wasn't just speed, or strength, or even reflexes. It was how quickly he made everything else move. Movements clicked. Patterns revealed themselves for him. Techniques that took others weeks to grasp felt obvious. Like his body already knew what to do. Soccer fields, basketball courts, tennis matches, running track. Hinata moved through them all like he was collecting experiences rather than learning skills. Coaches tried to teach him the fundamentals, but he rarely needed more than a demonstration. Once he saw it, he could do it. And not just do it, perfect it. At first, it frustrated a lot of people, but it also amazed some. But then, it began to intimidate others. By the time he reached middle school, Hinata had built a reputation, not just a great athlete, but as a problem. The kind of player who could walk onto any field or court and immediately become the best one there. He eventually narrowed his focus to just basketball and soccer. They suited him the best. Fast-paced, reactive, and explosive. Sports where instincts mattered just as much as training, and Hinata had instinct in abundance. He had become a centerpiece of these two teams without even trying. In basketball, his ability to read movements let him steal passes before they were even thrown. In soccer, he slipped through defenses just for openings so he could score. Tournament after tournament, win after win. It became routine for him. Predictable. Almost boring. You're a genius, they would say. He heard it so many times. The meaning of itself, that phrase, it lost. It was gone. There was no meaning. He was so used to it. If anything, it made him worse. Because when you're always the best, and there's nothing truly to challenge you, you stop questioning yourself. You stop doubting. You stop growing. Confidence came easy to Hinata. So did arrogance. Why wouldn't it? No one had ever proved him wrong. So, when summer came, the final stretch before high school, his freshman year, Hinata wasn't thinking about any sort of change. He already had a plan: to attend Karasuno High, join the basketball team, and then maybe run track in the spring just for fun, to keep winning, to keep being him. Nothing more, nothing less. That plan lasted exactly one afternoon. The gym, it smelled the same as every other gym as he had stepped into. The polished wood, the rubber soles, faint sweat lingering in the air. The echo of bouncing balls filled the space. Rhythmic, but familiar. Comforting, predictable. Hinata barely paid attention as he walked in, spinning the ball in his hand. This was his world. Until it wasn't. A thwack was heard. The sound, it cut through everything. Sharp, clean, and different. Hinata's hand stilled on the ball as he turned his head. On the far side of the gym, separated by a divider, 3 players moved in a rhythm that he didn't recognize. There was no dribbling, no constant motion like in basketball. Instead, it was controlled, intentional, focused. A silver-haired player stood near the net, raised his hands calm and precise. He pushed the ball upward with a soft, controlled motion. A set. Another player, loud and aggressive, rushed forward. His steps were quick and explosive. He jumped and swung his arm. Boom. The ball then slammed into the floor with a force that echoed throughout the gym. Hinata's eyes narrowed. That wasn't just strength. That was timing, coordination, a kind of connection between two players that felt different. As someone who's always played solo, it was new to him to see that. What was that? He didn't even realize that he had said it so loud, or that his feet had already started moving. By the time he had reached the edge of the volleyball court, the three players had noticed him. They paused, curiosity flickering in their faces seeing the basketball in his hand. Hinata then pointed towards the net. That thing you just did. What was it? The silver-haired player. He blinked, then smiled slightly. A set and spike. It's pretty standard in volleyball. Do it again. This time. Can I try? The player with the buzz cut frowned immediately, but he got a little excited. Hold on. You've never even played before, have you? Hinata shook his head with no hesitation. No, never. My middle school didn't have a volleyball club. Then why? Just send it to me. The intensity in his eyes got the attention of someone else who was watching. The confidence in his voice shifted the air as well. Not loud, not aggressive, just certain. The three players exchanged a glance. Doubt was obvious. Skepticism too. But something lingered. Their curiosity. All right, the setter said. He tossed the ball lightly, then pushed it upward again. Clean and perfect. The ball rose through the air. Then it hung and waited. Hinata moved. No wasted motion, no uncertainty. His approach was rough, unrefined, but his timing, that instinct, it allowed him to be perfect. His jump was higher than they expected. His body twisted midair, adjusting instinctively, and then his hand struck the ball. Boom. It hit harder this time. Faster. Sharper. The sound alone was enough to silence the gym around them. The ball bounced once, then rolled away. Nice kill, the loud one muttered, eyes wide. Hinata didn't hear him though. He was staring at his own hand, flexing his finger slowly. What was that feeling? It wasn't like basketball. It wasn't like soccer. It wasn't like the countless other times that he had copied movements before. This was completely new. And he felt like he didn't even get it right on the first try. It still looked different from the person that he just saw do it. And that excited him. Because after just seeing something once, his body could react and adjust and improve without even thinking. But this time, it seemed that his body was caught off guard by how new this movement was. A flicker of excitement sparked in his eyes. Something unfamiliar. He hadn't felt this in a long time. Then, a voice rang out through it all. Hinata! He snapped him back to reality. The basketball conditioning coach. Oh, right. I'll be right there. He turned, jogging back to that side of the gym. This moment should have ended there, him messing around before his real practice started. But it didn't. As he ran the drills, dribbled the ball, shot, even as the coach shouted instructions, his mind was never there. It was replaying that moment. The jump, the timing, the set, the impact. Over and over again, he wanted to do it. Volleyball. 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 That's all he could think about. By the time conditioning had ended, his decision had already been made. He didn't hesitate. He didn't overlook anything. He moved. The volleyball players were already packing up their stuff when Hinata walked over. Then he stopped right in front of them, breathing heavy and still sweaty from practice. His eyes, they remained sharp and focused, locked in a way they hadn't seen before. Hey, he said as he was tired. Does the volleyball club still have room for more members? The captain, Daichi, he studied him for a moment, carefully. Not his height being average, not his build being a little bit smaller, but the look in his eyes. It was something completely different. Yeah, Daichi would say after a pause. We do. A small grin formed across Hinata's face. Good, 'cause I'll be there. Daichi then held out his fist. Come back when school starts. And Hinata, he bumped it before leaving. Simple and certain. And as he turned to leave, one thought echoed louder in his mind. For the first time in his life, he hadn't just found something that he could be good at. He found something that he wanted. For some reason, that moment of hitting the ball, only spiking it once, he wanted to be the absolute best player that's ever played volleyball. Soon, weeks would pass, and the school year started, and the first weeks went by quick. Too quick for most, but not for Shoyo Hinata, because ever since that day in the summer, something had changed. Basketball still came easy, running still felt natural, but none of it could grasp his attention anymore compared to volleyball. So when whispers started spreading through the hallways about the boys' volleyball club starting up again, Hinata didn't hesitate. The final bell rang and he moved, running through the halls, breaching the gym doors, but someone was already there, walking in as well. A boy with dark hair, sharp eyes, and an intense presence. He stepped forward at the same time that Hinata did, and they paused. The boy's gaze shifted, measuring. Then he spoke, as they met with their eyes first, noticing that they were around the same height. What position do you play? Kageyama, instantly thinking that he was a setter. Huh? Hinata blinked. The question hung in the air. It was direct and simple, and if it was any other sport, he could answer. But he had no idea anything about volleyball. It's not like he did any research over the summer. He had only played that one time in the gym during conditioning. So he had no answer. Pointing at himself and pressing his thumb against his chest. Me? Yeah, nitwit. You're the only other person out here. Oh, I don't know. Silence hung in the air. The boy's expression instantly changed, and his eyes did as well. The shock and confusion. You don't know. Hinata shook his head, completely serious. I've actually never played before. Then another pause of silence between the two. This time, longer than before. Clicking his tongue before walking inside without another word. Hinata frowned slightly. What's his problem? He then followed in. Inside the gym, it was already alive. Familiar faces. Daichi, Sugawara, Tanaka, and a few new ones. A tall person with glasses and a quieter boy standing beside him. Introductions were quick. Names were exchanged. Energy filled the building. And then Sugawara clapped his hands. Together with a smile. How about we do a quick 3-on-3 to grasp everyone's skills? Daichi raised the eyebrow. Yeah, we can do it right now. Why not? It'll be fun. The teams were decided just as quickly. Sugawara, Tsukishima, and Yamaguchi against Hinata, Daichi, and Kageyama. Hinata glanced at him. Kageyama. So that was his name. The king, though, didn't look convinced. Not at all. In fact, as they took their positions, his gaze flicked toward Hinata again. This time, sharper and assessing him. Doubting. You really don't know anything, do you? Hinata shrugged. I mean, I'm pretty sure I can figure it out. Kageyama stared at him, then the net, then back at him. Unbelievable that they even let you in here. Before the game could begin, they had to stop, as it was Hinata's serve, and he didn't know how to. He didn't know the rotations, he didn't know anything about positioning. Daichi then stepped in, walking him through the basics, where to stand, where to move, and what not to do. Kageyama watched it all in silence, his expression unreadable. In his head, he would think, this is ridiculous. A complete beginner on this club team in a match? But then, as he sat and thought and turned around, the ball would go over, clean, but soft. Yamaguchi received it, a bit shaky, but sending it upward, Daichi moved, control, and reliable, and jumped to block as Tsukishima would try to spike it down from Sugawara's serve. But as it got to him, Hinata was right there to receive. It didn't exactly hit his arms, but it hit his chest a little bit. Either way, the ball floated perfectly into position. Kageyama's eyes flickered. There's no way. A perfect receive? Well, I guess I have options. Right or left, or I could even send it through the center. But then, he could feel it. In the center, Hinata was already moving, seeing the ball floating to Kageyama. Kageyama then thought, he doesn't even know the game. His fundamentals are non-existent. His positioning, it's rough. But Kageyama's gaze sharpened. Then he heard it. Hinata's jump, his timing, his instinct, his potential. It might be go high. As Hinata was already soaring through the air, it seemed that he went even higher, rising above the middle wall that Tsukishima had set. Looking up, he couldn't even believe it. Who the hell is this guy? Then, as the block started to fall down, Hinata continued to rise, slamming his hand into the ball, his body twisting midair as he swung. Boom! It tore through the air and into the ground. Silence filled the air for a moment. No one moved, no one reacted, until a voice cut through it all. What? Yamaguchi whispered. Tsukishima's eyes narrowed on his glasses, and Kageyama only stared back at Hinata. Tanaka had watched from the sideline. Beside him was Coach Takeda, who had broke first. That was insane. Hinata, right? I'm your superior, so let me show you. As he was showing him the new movement and how he could improve his spiking, Hinata absorbed it all, watching closely, just like always. Then the game had resumed. It started to form. At first it was rough, unpolished, but with every rally, every set, jump, spike, it became clearer. Kageyama had adjusted, and Hinata had adapted, faster than anyone expected. These two became something special. Their timing sharpened, their connection deepened, set after set, spike after spike. It stopped looking like a coincidence and started looking like an inevitability. The rhythm, the flow, the partnership, until something else happened. Tsukishima's spike came down hard and fast, clipping the block and sending it right off course, out of system, chaotic. Kageyama had to move to receive, adjusting mid-step and popping the ball upward. A good pass, but it drifted a little bit too far out of reach. But Daichi moved, going to bump it up. But Hinata, he was faster, jumping to the ball in front of him without hesitation and twisting midair, not to spike it, but to set it. His hands met the ball, controlling it and sent it flying all the way across the court. It was perfect. Kageyama's eyes widened. No way. But his body was already moving. He was already midair, already swinging. Kageyama decided to meet it with instinct, jumping up and slamming his hand into the ball as it would hit the floor next. Game over. Silence filled the gym once more. Not shock, not confusion, but something else. Understanding. Every player on the court had felt it. That moment, that connection. Daichi exhaled slowly from a little bit of exhaustion, and Sugawara smiled. Tsukishima adjusted his glasses, lingering on Hinata. And Kageyama only stared, not with doubt anymore, but with recognition. What you are witnessing is not just talent alone, nor is it practice or coincidence or even luck. This is the birth of something rare. A genius who can replicate anything that he sees. A king who can control everything that he touches. A wing spiker or middle blocker, or even, who knows, but a setter. That label, it seems to mean nothing to this duo because they are not bound by positions. They are not limited by roles. They're what you call interchangeable. Two players, one rhythm, one will, one unstoppable force that bends the flow of game itself. Remember this moment because this is where our story truly begins.